I went through this. I started out with early menopause and years leading up to that, and I came out of it with hormone balance. So there's not just hope, there's actually a complete way out of this hormonal mess. When balancing my hormones helped, and then it didn't, later on I found out I actually had an autoimmune disease, which is Hashimoto's, okay? And then on top of it, I was dealing with, at this time, more and more diagnoses like fibromyalgia. And then put on top of that, 3 car accidents in a matter of a year, traumatic brain injury. So I'm coming from a place where the multitude of these adding on, and this is before I was 40, caused debilitating brain fog that actually caused me to have trouble functioning in a medical practice and as a doctor. So I think that there's a huge part of this about where there's a mindset piece of this, where when you actually start experiencing brain fog, there's many causes and the symptoms can be very similar and they can affect different people differently. The biggest piece I want to talk about too here is that it's a loss from a mindset piece. Mindset is a huge part of our program, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally, right? And the way that mindset is affected by brain fog is the loss of self-trust. How many of you know what I mean? Because if you do, please write it in the comments section right now. Self-trust. The loss of self-trust is critical in the downstream effects that it has on your overall health. Because think about that, when you don't trust that you can remember things, when you don't trust things that you do route, and suddenly it's a struggle to remember numbers, to remember why you were driving somewhere. I mean, that's the scariest thing, and I've experienced that. You're driving somewhere and boom, you're in the middle of somewhere, you're like, where was I going with that? So is that distractibility? And so backing up a bit, what I want to say is that I was also diagnosed with having ADD, which I'll be honest with you, I don't have. But it's really interesting how conventional medicine will try to diagnose and treat brain fog with medications and diagnoses that fit into a box. And I'm going to tell you guys, brain fog does not fit into a neat little box, okay, which all of you have already mentioned, right? And Diana just says this becomes a struggle and it's frightening. Yes, absolutely, this can be extremely frightening. So what I'm going to say is my own journey through brain fog has included multiple diagnoses and affected by hormones, TBIs, and diagnosis of ADD, trial with ADD medication, and then not to also talk about mental health. I went through severe depression and a lot of trauma in my life as well. And there's a role of a trauma. And this is just something I'm going to throw out there, which is if you guys ever in the future, and we're talking about TBIs, which is physical trauma, but I really think that there's a role of emotional trauma that causes people to actually shut off their brain, to shut down and to dissociate. So there's actually a protective mechanism that we have towards physical, emotional, or sexual trauma that actually causes us to shut down our brain as a protective mechanism that is a contributor of brain fog. And if you guys are interested or can identify with trauma being one of the causative factors of your brain fog, like it was for me, and you want to talk more about it, please write that in the comments section. From a medical standpoint, let's talk about number 1. The number 1 cause of brain fog is hormonal changes in men and women. And hormones is not just your ovarian hormones with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And men have testosterone and estrogen and progesterone as well. This isn't just a women issue. Declining or changing hormonal levels in women and men can contribute significantly to brain fog. This is was a huge factor for me. And that's why for me, like this whole thing about and I was diagnosed with ADHD right around 34, 35, and I wasn't diagnosed with early menopause until I was 36. So how many people, kids, adult and men, women and men, are being misdiagnosed as having a medical disorder like ADHD and putting on multiple medications for this brain fog, inability to focus when it's hormonal? How many teenagers are being overdiagnosed with having ADD or ADHD when it's their hormones going crazy up and down? So it's not just hormones going down, but when your hormones really go up, this is also why many kids are around puberty is hyper is hyper and can be diagnosed with having ADD and ADHD. So there's a huge hormonal component. And this is why, for me, this ain't no BS small deal. It's really important to, number one, is get your hormones tested, really understand and learn the role of hormones, and work with a very experienced practitioner to really get your hormones balanced no matter what your age is, to deal with brain fog. I can tell you right now, for those of you in the TBI, post-traumatic brain injury community, there's tons of data that shows that after a traumatic brain injury, there's a huge role in the balance of estrogen and progesterone, specifically progesterone as being a factor that can actually really protect your brain and can help your brain heal. And this applies to men and women. I cannot tell you how many times in my medical practice, clinical practice, there were people post-MVA having a lot of TBI, post-traumatic brain injury type symptoms. And immediately I would put them on progesterone and the recovery was remarkable. And it's not just right when a brain injury occurs. It is even 6 months, a year later. People sometimes show up to my clinic and to our clinic 6 months or a year later. Can they benefit from hormone balancing? You betcha. And you don't have to have a brain injury for hormone balance to make a huge difference in your ability to have cognition, clear speech, to trust yourself. I went through this. I started out with early menopause and years leading up to that, and I came out of it with hormone balance, okay? I did not sound like this 10 years ago, okay? So there's not just hope, there's actually a complete way out of this hormonal mess. And we have a program, My Hormone Masterclass, which is specifically designed to do a holistic, comprehensive approach for anybody to go through, get your hormones tested, learn about the role of hormones. It ain't just taking some hormone, guys. You got to learn the bigger picture of how hormones fit in with your liver and your gut. So it's called My Hormone Masterclass, and there's a link up in the copy above and in the comment section for you to check out and learn more about My Hormone Masterclass. It ain't just about menopause, guys. It's about brain fog. It's about post-traumatic brain injury. It can be about adolescence, okay? So really importantly, that's the role of hormones. Second thing that causes brain fog, and somebody already guessed it, I think that was Teresa, was blood sugar. And I'm not going to go too deep into blood sugar, but I can absolutely tell you right now that there was, last week when we discussed what time of day are symptoms worse, people said middle of the night and early morning was the worst for a lot of people. But some of you were like late afternoon, early evening. And I'm willing to bet you, those of you that have brain fog right now, there's specific times of the day that are going to be worse. And I can pretty much say that sometimes the worst brain fog for me personally and many of the clients we work with in our main program, Transform Autoimmune, is that their late afternoon slump, brain fog tends to be the worst. And that absolutely has everything to do with blood sugar. So if you haven't seen the training that I did about blood sugar and other trainings, please jump into the Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune, and look at the blood sugar unit in there. And that autoimmune table talk of when hormone symptoms are the worst. There's just so much with blood sugar. Every time, and it's not just high blood sugar, low blood sugar, it's the swing between high and low and the swing between low and high that really causes brain fog to be worse. And what I'm going to tell you is that blood sugar mastery is a huge part of Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally. It's main program. It's also a huge part of My Hormone Masterclass, because it plays such a role in hormone balance, but it plays such a role in brain fog that's in autoimmunity or hormonal problems. So really, blood sugar is really the second reason. If any of you are watching and you're not part of our Facebook group, Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally, please join the group, because everybody in the group, it's a private group. Go ahead and click, search Transform Autoimmune Disease Naturally and join. People in the group gets first dibs to all the lives that I'm doing for Autoimmune Table Talk and any of these topics, including brain fog today. So join the group.